Hello and welcome to another one of my hip hop discography rankings. Now, today I'm going to be looking at the most divisive figure that I've looked at thus far, the world's most scariest rapper, 50 Cent. Now, Mr. Cent has, as I say, would be considered my most divisive artist. There are certainly several people who credit him as helping revitalize mainstream hip hop and make big waves into the commercial area of it. There are many who also feel that he has led a very negative image, portrayed a very damaging image in terms of hip hop and hip hop stereotypes, particularly relating to gun violence. I myself feel I can see the arguments for both. I'm kind of in between these arguments. I can see how he's done had better equal footing in both of these areas. But I was also an artist that I grew up listening to, and as there are only 5 official albums to look at, might as well go through them and. I'd always see where some of these arguments may come from. So, without further ado, we start with number 5, Animal Ambition. So we're going right to the end. As very predictable. It's released in June 2014 under Caroline Distribution after leaving Interscope Records under Aftermath and Shady. This was basically a way of showing that 50 could still release music outside of Aftermath Interscope. And so, in a sense, it is a bit of it certainly feels like a bit of a thrown together project just to prove that he could release an album. A lot of, in that sense, does follow the kind of 50 formula, as it were. There's sort of like whatever general kind of mainstream, music, cars and guns and clubs and this kind of thing. There's production from Dr. Dre, the one Dre track on there, just to kind of help, a leftover track from what was going to be presumably on the album that 50 would have released on Aftermath. It was still on there, and helps give it a bit more of a diverse kind of feel, more of a bouncy, smooth vibe to it, along with a nice Trey Songz chorus. Other than that, there's not a great deal in terms of highlights. There's Irregular Heartbeat with Jadakiss and Kid Kid, who appears 3 times on the album around the time that Fish is trying to make Kid Kid happen. Certainly 50 and Jada's verses with the sort of kind of hushed tones in their delivery work really well for the menace of the track. In the closing portion of the main portion of the track with Chase the Paper, which is originally a beat that Lloyd Banks used and got reappropriated for this track with 50, Kid Kid again, Styles P and Prodigy all together. No one really brings their best work onto this song, but it's nice to have some different voices, not just 50s on there. In the same way that on one of the bonus tracks, Schoolboy Q is featured, the track Flip On You does well to showcase him. We have some more triumphant feeling tracks towards the end of the album, with Twisted, featuring Mr. Probs, and Winner's Circle. There's a sort of storytelling track as well in the form of The Funeral, which was also kind of a bonus track of the album, which tells the story of 50 being at a funeral of someone that he knew, and by the sounds of the verse, someone they'd played a hand in having killed. So at least there's that form of storytelling for 50, which we don't always get a lot of. But I say the rest of it is fairly formulaic. It's short, at least. All the tracks are short and they don't overstay their welcome particularly, but they're still fairly basic substandard tracks. There's not a lot to get excited about with it. It's kind of just it's only showed once he didn't have the gleam of being with Dr. Dre and 50 Cent and Eminem. So we move on. Number 4, we got Curtis. So this famously released September 11th, 2007, the same day as Kanye West's graduation. It was kind of a bit of a billing of 50 Cent being the main figure of the mainstream gangster rap of the time, Kanye being the more alternative hip hop, and with Kanye generally winning the sales battle, it kind of felt a bit like the ends of 50 in a way. It feels a little bit on the album. It kind of feels like again the gleam's kind of coming off 50 quite a bit. There's this kind of just mixture of the more hardcore tracks, particularly with the beginning, My Gun Go Off, Man Down, which is a very... The title was actually supposed to be Officer Down, but due to the contents of brutality against the police, it's basically been censored to oblivion, which kind of begs the question of why it made the track listing, just for the controversy, I suppose. And quite a lot of big names featured on the album. Akon on the aggressive track I'll Still Kill. Justin Timberlake's on there, Mary J. Blige, Robin Thicke. Dr. Dre produced a couple of tracks on the album, but even these tracks, which usually kind of save a 50 album, just feel fairly tired. Come and Go, which barely features Dre on the chorus, and the slightly better Fire with Nicole Scherzinger. Young Buck turns up for a cup of coffee as well. But neither of these tracks really do too much that isn't accomplished on other parts of the album. There's a few kind of gimmicky tracks as well. Just in terms of the song Amusement Park, which kind of uses fairground attraction rides as a sexual metaphor. It's fun enough, but it doesn't really, the writing of it kind of loses itself a little bit. Similarly with the track Fully Loaded Clip, which features 50 mentioning various hip-hop couples in the chorus just because. Peep Show featuring Eminem, not their strongest collaboration by a long shot. M's verse kind of just serves to make some kind of freaky sex thing to make it shocking and noteworthy, but it doesn't add a lot to the album. The main sort of person who helps with the album really, or the strongest tracks, come from Jake One, the producer, not Jake One, the rapper, providing the production for the very hard-hitting Moving On Up and the more soulful All of Me featuring Mary J. Blige. Also, Dr. Dre co-produces the track "Straight to the Bank." It's probably the strongest of the tracks that he contributes to. But we also have the remix of that song, "I Get Money," which is kind of a bit of a harder hitting song. 50 feels more invigorated lyrically on this. Similarly, with tracks like "I'll Still Kill." AO Technology, the main single of the album, there's a nice chemistry between 50 and Justin. Timberland's glitchy beat is very interesting as well. Um, we have, as a bonus track on this, we have Hustler's Ambition from the Get Rich or Die Trying soundtrack, which, when it's one of the strongest tracks on the album, is kind of telling for the rest of it. Yeah, I say a lot of it does. Again, back to the formula of 50, and just club tracks, gun tracks. Not a lot of them do much that hasn't already been covered by 50. The love songs as well. But the songs that are strong on here are at least catchy and memorable. So, and as I say, there's points on here where 50 does feel very strong lyrically compared to a lot of the stuff that's been put out by 50. So, doing that. So number 3, we have Before I Self-Destruct. This is the last album that was released on Aftermath of Shady. So this is the end of 2009. This was more of a return to the hardcore nature of 50, sort of more so than a lot of the stuff. 50 having a lot of hardcore tracks on albums, as we've discussed, isn't particularly anything new. But with this album, we just really kind of tried to go all out for it. I mean, the first, essentially 3 quarters of the album are, very hardcore, aggressive tracks, leaving the more commercial songs for right at the end of the album. These being "Baby by Me" featuring Neo, "Do You Think About Me," "Okay You're Right," produced by Dr. Dre, and the bonus track "Could Have Been You" featuring R. Kelly, which was produced by DJ Khalil as a Detox leftover track, which has been repurposed as a 50 song. It's the smoothest and therefore more, for me personally, stronger tracks out of all these more commercial feeling songs. I say the rest of the songs are very hardcore, grimy, gritty, right from the banging open of the Tie-Fi produced "The Invitation." The more soulful and reflective "Then Days Went By." Very hard-hitting "Death to My Enemies," also produced by Dr. Dre. Dre again appears for the track "Psycho" featuring Eminem, which features the two of them going back and forth, and a bit more of a more comfortable collaboration between the two of them. M was going through the relapse serial killer phase, so the content reflects that. 50 does fairly well to match M's more rapid fire approach to the track. A few shots at Rick Ross on there. There's some more attempts at different songwriting, metaphorical writing. "Hold Me Down" uses the woman gun comparisons are used by Nas on "I Gave You Power" and Tupac on "Me and My Girlfriend." "Gangster's Delight" uses a more gangster rewriting of "Rapper's Delight" for the chorus. So 50 sounds hungrier and more intense on a lot of these tracks. Some of them do just kind of feel 50 kind of just treading treading water, making just going through the motions a little bit, and the fact that a lot of the songs are the similar hardcore nature does mean they kind of get a little bit lost in the shuffle as it goes on and kind of bleed into each other a little bit. But still, it is more commendable of an album, just for the fact that he was trying to go back to the more aggressive hardcore nature, not too heavy on the gun material particularly, just straight aggression, and the production reflects that throughout all those earlier tracks. But still, it is fairly formulaic after a while. So we move on to number 2, The Massacre. I was considering taking this further below before I self-destruct. It is a very overindulgent album. This version is the deluxe version. Even sort of the regular version has 22 tracks on it, and this one's just got about the same amount, just with a slightly different track listing. But as much as it again kind of follows the 50 blueprints, the strong tracks on here are really, really strong, very memorable. 50 is very good at making some catchy tracks, and there are elements where 50 does feel like he's trying to introduce some new sounds onto the album. The first few tracks, for example, In My Hood, features a kind of bluesy saxophone at the end. This is 50, has some more Asian string samples. I'm Supposed to Die Tonight, produced by Eminem, with nice rock guitar in it. Helps adds to the kind of haunting, menacing nature of the track. Definitely one of the highlights of the album. The intro, we still get the woman finding a Valentine's present and being shot. The album was originally going to be the St. Valentine's Massacre, going to get pushed back after Valentine's Day. It just became the Massacre, and it's still kind of, I guess they didn't have the time to remove the that opening skit. And I suppose in terms of a massacre, it does there's a lot of it's certainly a very overindulgent at times with the amount of tracks that are on there. It's a lot of the quite violent tracks on there. Guns Come Out, and produced by Dr. Dre, My Toy Soldier, produced by Eminem, featuring Tony Yayo. But they are still catchy and very bumping. So even though they do kind of hammer home a lot of the gun stuff, it's still, you still can't help but kind of get drawn to what 50's saying, because of the charisma that he brings on, and the nature of the tracks and the production. Towards the end, we get some more smoother tracks. It's quite short songs as well. Build You Up, featuring Jamie Foxx. God Gave Me Style, So Amazing, featuring Olivia on the chorus. Olivia also again turns up on the main single of the album, Candy Shop, with a lovely, smooth, atypical Scott Storch beat of that time. The candy, sweet, sexual metaphors do kind of similar to a lot of 50s other metaphorical writing, does kind of get a little bit, leaves a bit of a weird taste in the mouth, as it were. But it's the gimmick that 50 was going for with the song, and it's it it's a fine song. It just never did a lot for me. With one of the other more infamous tracks of the album, Piggy Bank, which of course featured a lot of shots at rappers. The Ja Rule feud, which obviously was very prominent at the time. Then also, featuring shots at Fat Joe and Jadakiss, who had the temerity to work with Ja Rule. Nas gets a shot as well. Shine. The song itself isn't that great. Obviously the shock value of mentioning all these big name rappers. The disses themselves aren't that great either. There are a couple of nice lines in there. I mean, 50 has the line towards Fat Joe, but Fat Joe saying, lean back, was like in the club, my shit sold 11 mil, his shit was a dud. It was kind of amusing, as well as the line towards Jadakiss, don't fuck with me if you want to eat, I'll do your ass in like Jaded Mob Deep. A very ironic line, because on this album we would get the Out of Control remix featuring Mob Deep, who have just signed to G-Unit at the time. Both versions of Out of Control are kind of just very strong, it's kind of like stronger tracks on the album, because they just have very thumping Dr. Dre production. The remix has more of a kind of haunting string section and piano, but they're both very strong in very different ways. Both well worth listening to. 15 Mob Deep have great chemistry on the remix and good verses. We also get the Eminem produced Gatman and Robin, which uses the old school Batman theme song for a beat. Eminem feels a lot more comfortable over this beat than 50 does, with his very, again, quite a rapid delivery for his verse. It's still a fun song though, even if it is more for M's verse than 50's verses. You have a Baltimore Love Thing, another attempt at a different style of writing, this time using speaking from this perspective of some drugs. I don't believe it's left kind of ambiguous what drugs. It's kind of heavily implied to be heroin. I think the idea is it's ambiguous. It's just about a relationship between a woman and the drugs that she's taking a lot of, and for a track like this that is kind of well written by 50. So again, there is a lot to unpack on the album. Not all of it hits extremely well, but I say the strong tracks do kind of outweigh a lot of the weaker songs, and makes them not drag the album down so much. There's enough good content on there to get through. The one advantage to having so many tracks on the album. Infamously at the time, on this version we have the DVD of kind of the videos to all the different tracks of the album. Again, not all of those videos necessarily work that well. Just again, the overindulgence of adding so many videos to the album, but at least 50's putting a lot into the material, the marketing of the album, I suppose. So it's a fine album overall. I'm say the strong bits are strong, the weak bits aren't terrible. So we obviously have to go number one, Get Rich or Die Trying. released February 2003, about 2 years before the Massacre. And of course, this is 50 at his strongest in terms of a persona, in terms of a writer, and as a performer. Fresh off of his being signed to Shady and Aftermath, like the little mixtape run that he was starting at the time, and right from the thumping get go of What Up Gangster, we get it kind of gets a little bit of it kind of feels like a bit of a kind of the rags to riches story for 50 in a way, with the Get Rich or Die Trying title, all the way from say the big intro of What Up Gangster, the introduction of the relationship with Eminem with Patiently Waiting, another great collaboration between the two of them, good verses between the pair, particularly for Eminem. Many Men discussing his shooting was obviously very famous, one of the most famous things about 50. Getting all the way to the end, which gets to almost a breaking point with the other Eminem collaboration, Don't Push Me, also featuring Lloyd Banks. All three of them just the building tension of their verses, just again just almost sounding at breaking point for the three of them. Then just to cap it off with Gotta Make It to Heaven, the more jubilant ending to the 50 story, as it were. Then we gave a few bonus tracks as well on this. We have Wankster off of the 8 Mile soundtrack, You're Not Like Me, and Life's on the Line, which of all the Ja Rule, this is kind of certainly one of the strongest ones. You really feel the conviction in everything that 50 is saying on the track. Lots of quotables on there to kind of latch into you. And of course, throughout the actual the main body of the album, we get everything from the big club tracks, In the Club, If I Can't. We get the kind of the drug song with High All the Time. We get quite a heavy gun track with Heat, sort of a nice skit at the beginning. It's probably the weakest track overall, though. The gimmick of the sort of production, the sort of a gun being sort of loaded and shot and this kind of thing is kind of you can see where the gun talk is a bit heavy there. But then we also get Back Down, another diss towards Ja Rule, featuring comedic skits at the end, 50 being Ja Rule's stylist, I believe it's supposed to be. PIMP, another kind of controversial track. It's nice kind of bouncy sort of steel pan Jamaican kind of feel in a way, produced by Mr. Porter of D12. It's fine enough until it drags on a little bit. In the third verse of it, the misogyny gets a little bit heavy, and kind of less playful. But it was a big song. It's the remix with Snoop Dogg and Lloyd Banks and Young Buck of G Unit. It kind of works a bit better. Speaking of G Unit, say Lloyd Banks appears on Don't Push Me. Young Buck appears for Bloodhounds, a track which was originally his, but then made a collaboration between him and 50, and works well between the two of them. There's some good pairing there. Like My Style has Tony Yayo, not as prominently as Lloyd Banks and Young Buck's features, but at least he kind of showcases himself on there, and particularly the hype role, the hype man role that is well accustomed to. Poor Little Rich, which is a sort of nice, kind of heavy, kind of banging, more up tempo track. Then we get 21 Questions, the love song of the album, which 50 himself actually had to fight to put on the album. To commendable to show that he knew he had to be more than just the one-dimensional thug, to show that he had layers and he could be sensitive. And nice chorus from Nate Dogg as well. So yeah, again, throughout this album, 50 sounds hungry. 50's charisma is really sells a lot of these tracks, and this was just his strongest by far. Quite well, but certainly quite comfortably out of all the official album releases they put out. And there's no one that this was one of the main driving forces for this style of hip hop at the time that it came out. And yeah, a very strong showing from 50. So I've discussed those now. I will see you again for more in the future.